few people who don't know, this young man here will be co-hosting Citizens. He will be giving us his perspective as an Asian American youth. I figure, when I do these history months, it can't be told better than the person who is of that particular racial or ethnic or gender for women. I don't know if you're a gynecologist, you can't tell a story about women's pain better than a woman. Yeah, you can talk about her anatomy, but please, you need a woman to tell that story. Similarly, if you're talking about Indigenous Americans, if you're talking about African Americans, maybe obvious African descendants to tell that story, whether you're Afro-Caribbean, Afro-American, Afro-European, Afro-European, you need someone of that ilk to tell that story. And that's not to say no one else can tell the history of the roots. Yes, of course, but there's certain nuances that come with an individual who is from that ethnicity, that race, that gender, that you can't get from young scholars, PhDs, world travelers. Yeah, that's very nice. Beautiful pictures, National Geographic, I love them. I love them to death. Beautiful pictures, but I don't think too many people would argue that. But the story I think is best told of that. Anyway, now I've talked all through my man's thing about the diaspora. We'll get started in a second. I'm standing up. Just like you.
Before you start, there's a team here that's link at the bottom for you guys to leave some comments or suggestions. We love to hear your feedback. So it's anonymous, of course. If you guys can use personal, then you can just put it in this jar before you leave. Okay? That's all. You're good.
Did you say he was half Iraqi and half British?
Yeah, his mother, I believe, his mother is the Iraqi, and his father is British. There's another fellow who I don't have up here right now. And I'll tell you because I need to grab his name. Khalid. But anyway, he, as they put it, because the description said, he's Jamaican. I guess that's his black side. Irish and Italian or something. Well, you got a mother and father, so yeah, one of y'all is obviously black. The other is, we would say is white. And, well, white who? What European country? And see, that's the other thing. Okay, let's do something. One of the reasons I do these history months is because I feel that we, as the general public of Americans, are woefully ignorant of one another. And since we're here in the New York metro area, we are blessed, really, unlike other portions of the country, although you have major cities like LA, Miami, Houston, Dallas, in Texas, Chicago, Detroit. I don't think they have the broad scope of different ethnicities and nationalities that we in the New York metro area have. I used to tell this to my students when I was teaching art. And I wasn't teaching history, but I felt that it was very important to not only just do an art project, to do a craft from, say, Mexico, upheld Picados. Okay, they're from Mexico. You need to learn how to origami, out of China, to Japan. Interesting. But do you know where those countries are? Do you know anything about those people? So I would then, give them little hints, give them little informations, make them look up, not only at the map, but look it up. And this would be a time when I'd say, you know what? Y'all not supposed to have your phones, but I know you got your phone. Look this up right now and tell me. And I said, don't worry about it because the principal comes in. I'll cover for you. We'll both get thrown out today. This is what it's really supposed to be used for. Not just Facebook and or what is it, Snapchat, Instagram, or whatever it is. That's fine, but that's entertainment. We have to get beyond entertainment. We need entertainment. I was talking about how it's always said we celebrate these history months. Celebration is good. Partying, some food, some drink, seeing people that you don't know, that's fine. But can we learn something about it? Because I've been out of the school system for just over a decade, but in the time that I was there, history, American history, and world history were taught pretty much, and I'm talking about up until 2012, I left in 2012, taught pretty much the same way they were taught back in the 60s when I was in school. Harriet, bless you. Sojourner, bless you. Nat, bless you. I'm glad, you all are important people, but you're not the only people. Come on. As I did Black history, I got tired of looking at the list of different uprisings in the United States alone. I compared the United States uprisings and Maroonage to the Palenques in the Spanish-speaking countries and the same settlements in Brazil, all right? Wherever there was slavery, there was runaways. When there were runaways, these runaways formed settlements of resistance, where they would have to fend for self, live off the earth. And if the slave catchers came, well, time to get busy, steal those guns, use those hatchets, use those machetes. But anyway, I'm really digressing. This is about Asia. When you think of Asia, as you see the title, The Rise of Sleeping Giants, what do you know about Asia? Anyone? It doesn't matter because I'm not the big professor here. What does anyone know? If I say Asia, what could you say that would be descriptive of Asia? Anything. It could be a country, it could be a culture, it could be a cultural item. And when I say cultural item, I'm talking about food, I'm talking about religion, I'm talking about dress.
I'll say very diverse because it covers so many countries and cultures.
Exactly. When you think of Asia, like Jennifer was saying, I don't know how many countries are in Asia, but let's look at this. Asia starts, they say, in the Urals, the Ural mountain range. Some say the Caucasus mountain range. All right, doesn't matter. See this color here? That's all Asia. Okay. Yeah, this too. You know this area, right? The Middle East, the so-called Middle East. It's not does this look like this is in the middle of the East? I don't think so. This would be the middle of the East. All right. We have to learn to speak accurately. All right. One other thing. Asia is in what hemisphere? We have two hemispheres. We live in the Western Hemisphere, which is over here, the United States, and the Americas. I was just asking Aham, by the way, this is Aham. I was asking him, I said, man, can you read this? Because I can't read it. But I think this is the zero line, right?
Oh yeah, this one right here.
Right. So, if this is zero, this is the prime meridian. This splits the planet. And on the other side of the planet, which is over here, the international date line, you have the Western Hemisphere, the Eastern Hemisphere. Notice something. As you bring this line up, Europe, most of Europe, look, most of Europe is in the Eastern Hemisphere. Wow, is that what you were taught? I don't think so. Well, let me not speak for you. Did they tell you Europe was in the West?
Yes.
Well, you're
Yeah,
correct. Correct, right? Well, this is how much of the West, that much of Europe is in the West. Well, what about all this stuff to my hand? That's in the Eastern Hemisphere. So that's in the East. Can somebody, you have your phone, can you put the definition, ask for a definition of continent, please?
What is the definition of a continent?
What does it say? Did you get it?
Sorry, there's a few different continents. I got one that was like, whoop, wrong one. Noun, any of the world's main continuous expanses of land, in parentheses, Africa, Antarctica, Asia, Australia, Europe, North America, South America. Also, the continent, the mainland of Europe, is distinct from British Isles. And it continues to go on.
Is there I read somewhere that continents generally are surrounded by water. Not to say they're islands, but they're surrounded, or mostly surrounded by water. Okay? If you look at Africa, mostly surrounded by water? I think so. If you look at South America, mostly surrounded by water? I think it's North America. I think so. Australia, the biggest island on the planet, but they made it a continent. Definitely surrounded by water. Okay? When you get to Asia, well, even if you use their demarcation, it's still mostly surrounded by water. But if you use, because some people will say Europe is in Western Asia. The map. Europe is actually Western Asia. It's a political thing that says that Europe is the, what's it, sixth continent, I think, sixth or seventh continent. Okay, enough of that. The two countries that I wanted to focus on in particular are India, as you see the map over there, and as you know it today, it wasn't always India. It used to be called the Indus Kush or the Hindu Kush. We're talking about 5,000-6,000 years ago, this is true. But in those times, and at that time, they didn't have, or it was just forming, I should say, Hinduism, one of the major religions in India. Not the only one. Buddhism is there as well. There are other religions, Jainism, a number of other religions. And I'm sure Christianity is there too. Not necessarily indigenous to Islam. But with India being, I think now, it's the largest, it has surpassed China in population. But no one's going to argue India and China, the two most populous countries on the Asian continent. And I was saying in terms of landmass, well, Russia may be a larger landmass, but not a larger population. And when we think of Russia, we really think that Russia is like a European or white country. They have many ethnic groups throughout Russia that you never see. When you turn on TV and you see Putin and the boys, or downtown Moscow or whatever, you don't see these ethnic groups. But that's not unheard of, because you would never know that there are black enclaves in Mexico. There are black enclaves in Peru, in Colombia, in, well, I don't say Venezuela. But because that's not what we see, okay? When you look at the History Channel, you know, Now, if you go on YouTube, you will see how they seek out these various darker complected and black enclaves of people in these countries, but by and large, you don't see that. You have to go there and know where to look. In Mexico, one of the places in particular is you have a place in Veracruz, of course, was the area where the Olmec, and for those of you who are familiar, they're large basalt heads. All of these heads, if you look at the features on the heads, true, it's stone, so it could be anybody. But when you look at those lips, if you look at that rounded nose, okay, you can't find the color. We don't know what complexion those people were. We're not sure of the hair, except on definitely one, there are grades, but that doesn't prove that they're black. But that's a classic West African face. You're looking at it. It'd be hard for anyone to deny that. You know? Anyway. So why do I do this? So we can learn more about ourselves. We can learn more about, quick question. Modern man. I know none of you in here, I don't think, are scientists per se, but you may know this. Where did modern man evolve from? What place on the planet? Do we have a consensus? There's still some who say no, but most of the scientific community says.
Definitely in the United States.
You're just like one of my students, but there's always somebody, a wise guy. No, if you look, you can look it up. There's an out of Africa theory, and then there's a theory where they believe that the Asians, the indigenous or Native Americans, and other people just sprung up on the planet. You know, modern man didn't come out of Africa. No, the majority of the scientific community. Now we got DNA. They're finding an African DNA all over the place. I'm not even going to touch that to kind of explain how that works. But DNA is a scientific advancement, like if you went back 200 years ago, fingerprints. They weren't doing fingerprints back in the early 1800s. They didn't know nothing about no fingerprints. They knew fingers, but that was it. Nothing about a fingerprint. Well, this is similar to DNA. That's almost indisputable. So, at any rate, can you identify these folks over here? What do they look like? These people in this drawing here. Can everyone see the drawing? No, that one right here. What are the one on the other?
On the left?
On the
This
east.
one where you're on the bicycle.
Oh.
Yeah, people on the bike.
Asian.
Asian, okay. Any country in particular they may be from? Any country?
From here, the Philippines.
Y'all can't see. That's too small. Too small.
Oh, China.
Yeah, Chinese.
Well, Chinese to you possibly?
Well, the star.
Could be Japanese, I don't know.
It was the star.
Or Korea, yeah. Yeah, actually it's supposed to be Chinese, you're right. And the star is the kicker because this is from the time when Mao Zedong was, and the Communist Party had just taken over from the imperialist government. So this was back in that day. Although I didn't do it at that time, this is an old drawing, that's why it's brown like this. It was done in the 80s, actually. These guys over here are supposed to represent a Chinaman. And this fellow here, he's indigenous to Africa. I wish I had a actual better picture. But if you look up, and I wish anyone would who's not familiar, look on your phone, just Google a picture of S-A-N-P, the San people. There's also Khoisan, K-H-O-I-S-A-N. They have a similar look in terms of the facial composition tends to be rather high cheekbone, but the eyes, which you don't find all over China, only in the Mongoloid people. As you move down into Southeast Asia, you don't find as much of that eye situation. There's a term for it. It's a muscle that's either over or underdeveloped, which causes the eye to look as though it's slanty. Okay, but if you look up the San people, what does it say? Go to the picture and you'll see what they look like, what many of them look like, the pictures. And if you look at them closely, you'll see they have the same thing. These people not only are among the oldest people on the planet, they are also a people who have this physical distinction here. And I'm not saying they made the Chinese people, no, I didn't say that. But, we used to say, many years ago, if we saw someone who had the eyes like that, who was obvious African descendant of a black person, we say, oh, you got some China in your family, you got some Chinese man in your family. Not necessarily. I mean, it might be true, because the Chinese, like many others, have gone all over the world, So it might be true, but not necessarily. You may have some San, some Khoisan. All right? So, let's watch the time here. I want to show you a little slideshow. It's 8 minutes. And since you're quiet now, you won't fall asleep on me, but it will go over some of the things that aren't necessarily here, but it will touch on some of these things. And, just watch it.
Odonna neni jarabide kelela odonna neni furunyonde kelela odonna ay bangi bolodane kanna ay bangi bolodane kizela ay bangi bolodane kunna ay bangi bolodane nyala ne dusu kolobe dimina kune dumbe jarabife ne dumbe ganu fe ne dumbe jarabife ne dumbe ganu
You can tell that's an old video. I cheated. It's not current. I have 505 email. One of the reasons I hear is his name. Well, I have been hearing this because I wanted to discuss the Asian youth, or youth in general. What are the youth thinking? So I asked him to speak to some of his classes. By the way, has worked with APA, which I'm a part of also. And APA, of course, is Asbury Park African American Music Project. And we are responsible for the revitalization of the Turf Club, the last standing musical venue on Springwood Avenue, original. And Han has given his talents he has many talents actually, he's a musician as well, I let him tell him all that stuff. But his writing talents to our website. But the reason he's here tonight is to help us understand what is going on with Asian American youth. So, you know I can't remember my own questions, but let me just ask you, What do you feel many of the Asian or Asian American youth are thinking about in terms of socially and politically?
Yeah, so over the past few weeks, I've tried to ask many of the Asian Americans that I know about these various topics and what they think about the current political climate, social climate. I was able to ask 16 people ranging from many different Asian countries, and for socio-political issues, yeah, I definitely saw that many different people have different opinions on what are the most important, what are the most contentious issues for Asian Americans and just America in general. But I think there are two that really stand out. The first one is an event that happened quite recently, and that was Asian hate during the pandemic. So of course the pandemic happened because of coronavirus, and the coronavirus originated from China. So some people in the United States thus started blaming Asian Americans for bringing the virus to the United States, which of course was completely untrue, but it did result in a lot of discrimination, a lot of racism here in the United States. And in fact, many of the Asian Americans that I talked to said it was one of the hardest points in their lives because of this. They felt more discrimination and more racism than they ever had in their lives before this. And of course, it has definitely gone down a lot with the, also the coronavirus, not going down itself, but still there's some remnants of this. But another important note is that this doesn't affect all Asian Americans, right? This was predominantly against East Asian Americans, and of course Asian Americans, right? Even the term itself, as we saw, Asia is so big, right? It encompasses so many different diverse countries, right? So this certainly impacted one specific group of Asia more than others, but certainly a very big issue for many. Another very big issue that I saw among the Asian American youth was education. So education is a very important, topic in many Asian societies, and in fact is often the reason for Asians to immigrate to America, and that's for educational opportunities. So, for instance, some people have immigrated to the United States for college and get access to that, higher education. Well, others have immigrated here to give their children an opportunity for a better education, and that resulted in a lot of Asian Americans, Asian American youth, feeling pressured to achieve an education, to really do the best that they can to go to a high-level college. And this has thus resulted in a lot of pressure, right? There's the stress of trying to live up to what their parents, what their dream is for them, what their idea is for them. And especially with secondary education, right? It's expensive. It's very expensive, and a lot of people find it hard to afford paying for college, especially when Walmart leads a lot of Asian parents try to push their kids to go to the best school that they got into, right, and they apply. But I remember even one of my friends, right, he felt pressured to try to take out student loans for college, but of course student loans are very detrimental to a lot of people, right? Some people spend their entire lives paying off their student loans, and it's a very weighty decision that falls on many Asian Americans. Another big topic, at least in education, that I found was this specific study, learning STEM, right? So a lot of Asian parents feel that STEM fields, engineering, science is, what their children should go into. But then again, this creates more conflict, right? A lot of people, or a lot of Asian Americans, said that they weren't interested in STEM fields, that they weren't interested in, going to a career like this, that they're more interested in humanities or other subjects, but oftentimes they felt pressure to still go into it, and that's another big issue that I found many of the Asian American youth sharing. So yeah, definitely I think education and Asian hate are two of the biggest socio-political, issues that many of the Asian American youth told me about.
Okay. Let me ask you, in terms of yourself as well as the students you talk to, what is their feeling about hip hop? Because that generally is the music of your time, although it's been around since my time. I was older than you when it came out, but at any rate, what is their feeling? Not only American hip hop, because hip hop is all around the globe now. got people rapping in, what is it, Hindi? It's one of the languages of India, because it's a whole bunch of them, if I'm not mistaken. You have people rapping in the various dialects, Mandarin and Cantonese, in China. I saw that. You can check it out on YouTube, and if you close your eyes, and well, you're not going to understand the language that you're speaking, but you would think that you're listening to American rap. It sounds very much like American, but anyway, what feeling do the folks that you know have?
Yeah, so hip hop is very popular among Asian American youth, as well as I think just the youth in general, right? Like it's a very much a growing music genre, and it's a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's so mainstream nowadays. Popular culture, with celebrity culture, right? A lot of the people I talk to, myself, know a lot of hip hop from celebrities, right? Like even big events. Like I don't know if you know the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef that was going on recently. That really popularized a lot, brought a lot of people's attention to it, and a lot of people brought it up. I mean, even I started listening to some Drake and some Kendrick Lamar because of that. And to go to hip hop on a world stage, definitely I think that it's probably less so than the American hip hop, but still it is quite popular. Like I know myself, I've listened to some British hip hop before, and I've listened to some hip hop in Japanese before, and again, like you said, right, it sounds a lot like the rap from here, but I think that for at least world hip hop or hip hop outside of the United States, I don't think as many people have listened to it, but there's still some popular artists, there's still some people, it's more niche, but it's definitely I think a growing field. So yeah, definitely hip hop. A very big genre, very much listened to by many Asian Americans, but I think also just Americans, the American youth in general too. And yeah, I definitely think that hip hop across the globe is also growing and becoming more popular.
I never Well, I mean, look, do we know everyone in New York? And I lived in New York for a while, so But it's interesting that this is going on, and I don't know if even if we were younger, I'm wondering too, other youth, your age, but not of Asian heritage, do they know about you?
Honestly, I'm not sure, but I'd probably say I wouldn't be so sure, I guess.
Yeah.
Because, I feel a lot of this comes also from people that abroad, right, in other countries, right? Like I think I've heard from some of my relatives about, the music in, from India, for instance, right? My parents are both from India, I have many Indian relatives, and I'm sure that holds true for other Asian Americans, that they're hearing a lot of this music from, their connections abroad. And, also, while it is getting a lot more popular, I think that probably non-Asian Americans, maybe over time will start to, find this and listen to this, but I definitely think that first and foremost will probably be the Asian Americans. So like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if people are starting to pick up rap and hip hop from other languages.
I just feel it's very important, and as a one-time public school educator, even though I was only teaching art, I feel it's necessary that we broaden ourselves. And the youth in particular, because I can remember when I was a young person, so in the school system, the TV dominated a lot of my recreational time. When I wasn't out playing sports, I was watching TV. So the TV dictated a lot of attitudes that I started to have about American culture and about the world. I don't think that's changed much. And now you got this, you got YouTube and all sorts of, you got so many screens, But anyway, let me just ask you one last question. How closely, if at all, do you find Asian American youth, and I guess it depends on the youth, but being knowledgeable or holding on to their parents' and grandparents' culture?
Yeah, so definitely I think that there's a range, right? There's a spectrum of, how much they hold on to their parents' and relatives' culture. Well, I think most Asian Americans can definitely say that they have at least some cultural connection to their parents, and this often comes from their family, from their parents telling them about their culture, if we're making them do the cultural ceremonies and showing them the religious practices. And I think especially one big thing is food, actually, right? A lot of the Asian Americans that I talk to and that I know say that food is one of the greatest way that they connect with their culture, whether just be eating it, but also making it, right? And another big one is language. So not all Asian Americans know their ancestral language or their parents first languages, but the ones who do say that, it's really has really been impactful for them, because not only just the process of learning the language, right? Often it either comes through schools or learning their parents just speak at home, but even after you do learn it, right, it allows you to really connect with culture more, because if they travel to their parents' country, their family's country, they can interact with it so much more, right? They feel like they're connected, because language barrier really is a big thing, and having that that language connection can really help them. So I mean, certainly some Asian Americans probably don't really connect that as much. They said that's more forced upon them, and they have more of a American outlook. I mean, of course, like society is pushing forward you to become more Americanized, right? Like schoolwork, all of that. But there's also a lot who take initiatives themselves to learn about their culture, right? Like at least at my school, we have many different culture clubs, right? Like the East Asian Culture Club, the South Asian Culture Club, the Muslim Culture Club, and these are all student run, and these students are taking the initiatives themselves to learn about their culture and to continue to practice it. So yeah, definitely while there is a spectrum, there are certainly a lot of Asian Americans holding on to their ancestral culture.
I smiled when you said the Muslim culture club. Okay. Because to me, of course, Islam is religion. And it's around the world. We have Muslims here in America, we have Muslims in South America, we have Muslims all over the world. In Europe, in Asia, it's not just found in the Middle East, so to speak. But anyway, any questions, any comments? Anyone? Comments, questions? Now's the time. Not just up here lecturing. And
I think it's really cool that you got to speak to. I think you said 60.
Yeah, it's
That's a good amount of people to actually speak to and get their feedback and just bring this to that, because some things I kind of didn't know. But it reminded me of when you said the Asian hate rate with COVID. I remember when I was in high school, I didn't know too many Asian people that I went to school with it, and didn't. But I know outside of it, when 9/11 happened, it was kind of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, each culture really gets a lot of hate when world things happen, which is crazy to me. But I don't know, when you said that, I just wanted to make a comment how that reminded me of that, because when I was in high school, that happened. And I was a freshman, and I just remember it was kind of like, whoa, what's going on? As a freshman, like, but I also remember kids our age talking about that too. And it's just a shame, honestly, but I really make it.
To piggyback off what she just said, like during the COVID, why do you think people blame, or not even blame, why do you think there was so much attack on the Asian people because of the pandemic? You think like people like blaming them for bringing it back? Different, suggesting people why people were doing this.
Yeah, I think it's for many reasons, right? Like COVID just happened so quickly, right? It was so destructive. So many people lost, friends and families' lives. I think, when hardship happens, some people, try to turn to, finding like an explanation or a reason. I think maybe like attacking these minorities might have like tried to give them some like, oh yeah, there's people who are the reason for this. Which I mean, of course, is very bad ideology, right? Very hurtful. But I think that like these, like blaming others might have tried to give them some like escape from it, but of course that just creates more hurt and destruction and hate. So I think that's probably why, and just like gives them a target because also disease, right? It's like invisible, right? You only really see the effects of it. So I think maybe having something tangible is what they wanted.
And in the Asian hate, it was primarily, at least what I remember hearing about, the hate was more against the Chinese. I don't remember them saying anything too much about Indian folks. I don't remember them saying anything about the Pakistanis, Afghans, Iraqis, Iranians. They're all Asian. Arabs too, Saudis. Hey, you Asian too. You're closely connected to Africa, so you sort of in the middle.
Well, I also want to say too, maybe because of the news as well, because
Yeah.
a lot of times when you see the news, like a lot of people just get so like this is exactly what's going on, and that's false. Like I've worked in the media. I'm not going to stand on my podium today, but I've had jobs in the media, and a lot of stuff is not true. So it's like a lot of people just look at the media and they'll just, let's blame them because that's what they said. And then months later, there's another fact or statement that's something totally different, right?
Well, Charles, I always love your presentations. I would agree with you that it seems like humanity started after, in the area of Africa, I guess the Fertile Crescent area. And it's so interesting, and you connect that African diaspora specifically to Asia today. And then it just seems like the project of white supremacy, what is the opposite of white supremacy? Black unsupremacy. And to see how, if that's the origins of migration and people, that the project of white supremacy still creates anti-Blackness even within Asian culture. And so, the beauty of your projects, I think, is to sort of counter that narrative that the cultures are actually way more connected than they are. And I think white supremacy does sort of the opposite and tries to decounter that and say, other is bad rather than we're all actually connected and similar. And so I just really love how well you do that. I'm trying to read this as well, but it's really...
When you look through this packet, many folks won't read it, but if you look through the packet, along with my title sheets, The Rise of Sleeping Giants, and the focus on India and China, one of the things that I brought up in here had to do with the Chinese, but specifically the Japanese. Back in the 40s, I have to read this to get this right. Roosevelt, FDR, back in 1942, signed Executive Order 9066, which mandated the removal of Japanese Americans. You might have heard it.
So that on TV, YouTube, on video.
Now, mind you, right. Mind you, we were at war with Japan. Okay, but wait a minute. What about Germany? With Hitler. Wait a minute. What about Mussolini with Italy? They locked them up. Nope. And lastly, Franco was in on it too, from Spain. I don't remember hearing about them locking up, them. So here we go with this color situation. No, the Japanese weren't necessarily black. Okay. But this order, Executive Order 9066, also had to do with cutting the immigration rate of not only Japanese, but the Chinese and Asian peoples, Indians as well, if you look it up. So true, this was like, 80-something years ago, okay? Then here we go again. One other thing that's spoken about in the packet is there is a current, what's his name? Vijay Prashad. He's a current author, an intellectual. He's from India. I think he's Indian American actually, but he's of Indian heritage. Okay, and he has written many books, but one of them shows how Asians in general, not just Indians, but Asians in general, are used against because they have, as Asians, come into America. And they are much more socially and educationally conscious. They rise to the ranks, okay? They're like model citizens. Another form of playing one group, one ethnic or racial group against another, okay? If you go back to the 50s and 60s, in here it tells you, not only on this page but on another, how many of you knew that during the time when India was becoming independent of Britain, and people like Nehru, Gandhi, and what's his brother's name? What's his name? Abenkar. I know I always do this. I mess his name up. Anyway, we know that Gandhi was basically about nonviolence. Abdikar is not so much, he was a Dalit as well. He was instrumental in the writing of the new constitution, India's constitution. A man from the lowest social status of India wound up, because he was educated, he was a doctor, he became a PhD. I'm looking for his name here. But at any rate, he and people like W.E.B. Du Bois and others were in, solidarity and exchanging notes on how to deal with their various forms of oppression. Their oppression was from the British in India, ours was from the Anglo culture here in America, but it's the same thing, down Prussia Mountain, by Mali. Okay, so, like Derek was saying, what I do try to do is not so much rah-rah for Africa, but Africa is always, to this day, you will hear more about Africa being poor and famine, and you don't hear anything about the wars in Africa, by the way. See, you heard about Ukraine, we jump behind that, no, that's really right. You heard about Palestine, but you don't hear too much about it. Talk about that. But wait a minute, they're killing them over there. Now, whether you believe that they should, and they're not, no one is anti-Semitic, because the Palestinians are Semitic people, just like the Israelis are. Look in the dictionary. I wish the media would stop this nonsense. And the rest of America who just follows along like this because they can't read, too lazy to do so. We're anti-Zionist, yes. And Zionism, although it's couched in Judaism, is a political movement. It is not. There's nothing to really do with religion. But I'm going off of preaching. Time is tight. Well, like something else.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for instance, going back to the Japanese internment camps, it reminds me, so my oboe teacher, so I play the oboe, and my oboe teacher, her grandmother actually went through these internment camps, and it actually goes back to something about, a lot of the Asian Americans learning about, these hardships that their family and ancestors went through. As, a lot of the time, their parents might not tell them about it for whatever reason, right? Whether to be try to distance themselves from it, or maybe they don't think it's important. Sometimes they assume that they already know. But for instance, my oboe teacher's grandmother, she would talk about the internment camp, but she'd call it camp. So she'd be like, oh yeah, when I went to camp, I would do this, or when camp, I experienced this. So my oboe teacher thought, oh, camp, that must be like summer camp, right? That must be like vacation. But then, when she was in 6th grade, her grandmother was talking about the internment camps, and she would say how she tried to make ice skates out of tin cans, right, to go on a frozen lake. But then she tripped and she broke her ankle. But then my oboe teacher was like, wait, a frozen lake? Wait, it's supposed to be summer camp, right? They don't have that there. And then, her entire family just looked at her because they didn't realize that she didn't know that camp wasn't summer camp, but it was an internment camp, And then, they explained to her, but she said that was a really pivotal moment for her because she got a first-hand point of view of these hardships, right? She had an experience, and I think, you know, a lot of schools, right, they'll try to, some even, you know, some don't even really even go over it, but they'll maybe try to like briefly go over it, some of the hardships that Asian Americans face, but often isn't, you know, enough. It doesn't really feel personal, right? You don't really understand it. But I think like having, you know, these testimonies is really important because you get to hear from their point of view exactly what they went through, exactly the challenges that they had to go through. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to be able to mention that, like, if you know, to talk to somebody, right, to ask people you know about like the hardship that they went through, because I think, you know, hearing it firsthand is really important in understanding, you know, truly what people went through and truly what happened. I think it gives you, you know, a greater view of it than, you know, what maybe school tells you or, you know, the media tells you, what, you know, in general, you know, society tells you. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to, you know, talk about that a little bit as well. So yeah.
Listen, I thank you for, you know, bringing the information to us, to me in particular, but to us in general. And like I say, we, you know, India is a hierarchical society, but certainly America is too, with all its brokenness. And they don't pay, we, Americans, don't generally pay enough attention to youth. Maybe our own youth, if we have a child, we will pay attention to that. But even then, a lot of times we forget, oh, y'all don't know nothing. Well, wait a minute. They do know some things, you know, so maybe we should listen to them. And then the other thing, like you were saying, there are more things that Asians in particular are not that dissimilar. They're not that dissimilar, but they are similar in the sense that as Black Americans, now think about this. If you go back to when you all, obvious African descendants, I see you all out there. If you go back to the time when you were a child, say 10, 11, 12, how much did your people talk about slavery? It wasn't until, well, I don't know, but that wasn't something easy to talk about, you know. And that wasn't enslavement, but to be locked up because of your race and nationality, what is that? That's similar to what happened to the Jews with Hitler. You know, they just told the Jews, all right, look, let's go, y'all. Let's hit it. You know, and then the Jews didn't take any of their personal belongings with them. So you know who got that? Same thing happened to the Japanese, okay? And I'm gonna relate that to our times when it was Black Wall Street, the first Black settlement towns of free Blacks, when those Blacks were run down and may have had to leave, you know what happened to their belongings. So, pain, you know, our story is very simple, all right? Thank you, folks, for your time. I know I'm not running over. Wow. I hit it to the hour, 7:12.
Thank you.
Thank you.